Jen, are you a writer?
I am not. I am an author. It's interesting because people ask me all the time and it catches me off guard. And I have to remember that, yes, I've written 3 books. I am an author, so I am a writer. In that sense, I am not a screenwriter.
So what is it that you do aside from the books?
I'm a speaker. I am a blogger for the Huffington Post. I am a writing instructor for Writers on the Verge at NBC. I've been a writing instructor there for 8 years. And I'm a story career consultant at Grisanti Consultancy.
When someone approaches you through your website
Yes.
and they say, I'm considering hiring you, how can you determine the difference between a writer that's dabbling in the industry versus those who say, this is my chosen career path, and you can tell the difference in terms of their level of commitment?
Yes. It's interesting. I mean, I get writers from coming out of college to co-executive producer, staff writer, all the way up to co-executive producer level. This is because I was a former 12-year studio executive. And when I was an executive, I staffed over 15 top primetime TV shows. And I got to know a lot of writers. So that allowed me, whereas I know a lot of consultants get the brand new writers. But because I've been exposed to the professional writer, I do get a lot of professional writers. I think my feeling is, like, a part of being a current programming executive really was identifying new voices. So I like working with the green writer who hasn't developed bad habits and who is open to the process. So I really don't have a problem if I have someone who is dabbling versus totally committed, as long as they are committed to the process that they sign on for.
You said something that caught my ear, and that was bad habits.
Yes.
So in terms of being an established writer or someone who's done it for several years and has, quote, their way, what are some different tip-offs where you see, okay, this person's more closed, sort of, arms and not open to the process?
Oh, yeah. There are many tip-offs. I would say probably the biggest tip-off is the inability to hear a note before defending a note. So I think, like, the biggest tip-offs, the first tip-off is on the page. When you can tell in the first 3 pages if a writer knows how to write, really has. But what I can say is you can also tell a voice, and you can have a writer who has a voice but doesn't have the formatting down. But the voice can still be heard through the bad formatting. So that's why I say I'm open, and I have no problem working with brand new writers. I love that. I also love working with produced writers who do have a stronger sense of the craft. However, the gift is really in recognizing when you have the newer writer who makes faux pas, like defending a note before hearing a note, which is a very big mistake that many newer writers make. It also is a mistake that writers make on staff. And so it really is helping them to feel safe, so that when you're giving a note, and I can say when I was a studio executive, the agenda was that of the network in the studio that I was carrying and giving notes. Whereas as a story career consultant independently, I have no agenda other than making the story the best that it could be. So this is why I encourage writers to be open and to recognize my only goal is to make their story the best that it can be.
You said something earlier about you can overlook maybe formatting if the voice is strong and authentic. Does that mean if the story is original, or it has nothing to do with that?
No, it does. You know, voice comes down to so many different things. And a voice could come down to a character description. It could come down to writing poetic and lyrical action lines. It could come down to the original concept. It could come down to knowing how to write a flawed character well. I mean, there are so many, I always try to figure out if I could really pinpoint what voice is and help people understand. And I think for me, a large way that I explain voice is the idea of what is your world view, what has happened to you in your life that has caused you pain and given you something to say. And how does your writing reflect that?
Oh, that's great. Have you ever seen someone be too emotional and too, because we all feel that our story is intense, and it is because we've lived it, but have you ever seen it in the writing where it maybe toned down whatever it is, the anger in that scene?
Oh, yeah.
Or something. Uh-huh.
I mean, I would say a much greater problem is not enough emotion. I think the too much emotion is not near as common as the how do we elevate the emotion so that we feel this more.
And when you see that, do you feel like that person's phoning in that character? It's like a filler, or is it that maybe they're not totally in touch?
Oh, I think that comes from being green and not really understanding. I think there's so much that goes into strong character work. I work with writers on the idea of thinking about the wound, thinking about the childhood wound, and how in a TV pilot, how the series trigger splits open that wound. And then the idea of what is the negative narrative that has come from that wound, and how is that getting in the way of the central character achieving the goal? And then how, through the pursuit, is the central character one step toward healing that wound?